Hello, my name is Emily, as you may or may not know, and I know that I am technically a day late for so-called spooky season, right? But let's just ignore that. Let's toss it to the side, right? Like ranch dressing. I typically get that on the side because I think ranch is a very pungent taste. And we are going to be doing an unhinged ranking of horror movies because listen, I personally love horror movies. I tend not to get scared at horror movies so much. Haunted houses, for some reason, I can't do. When it's right in front of me, when, the scary actor can be right in front of me saying, let's ask the audience. I am skedaddling to the next door town, but when it's on my screen, for some reason, I'm eating it up. But we are not going to be ranking these in a typical fashion, right? I'm not talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars or A, B, C, D, E, F, and perhaps even G, right? We're going to be ranking these in a similar way to how I ranked dating shows, where it's sort of just ranking these films by how I would feel if I were in the situation. Also, this probably goes without saying, but there is going to be a lot of spoilers in this video. And also for those of you who don't like scary movies or scary things, that's okay, because this is going to be a silly, goofy, chuckle giggle town video, and it shouldn't be actually scary unless you're particularly wimpy. And that's okay. It's okay to be a wimp, okay? It's so okay to be a wimp that they even wrote a diary about you from when you were a kid, okay? So we're just gonna dive right in. The categories for the rankings are as follows. Number 1, I would off myself within the first 40 minutes. Number 2, did someone put drugs into my acai bowl? Number 3, Mommy loves you, but this f***ing sucks. Number 4, someone's going to jail and it's not me. Number 5, someone's going to jail and it is me. And number 6, am I the only normal one here? Now, there are a plethora of horror movies out there, but I'm only going to be talking about these select few. The Purge, Sinister, Talk to Me, The Conjuring / Annabelle. I paired them together since they're kind of like sisters. Saw. Hereditary, Midsommar, Final Destination, Weapons, Terrifier, and It. So, sorry if there's a horror movie that you wanted to hear about that's not on the list, but we don't have all day. So, it's a long list to get through. Let's just jump into it. And as you know, some of these movies are whole franchises that have extensive lore, and each of these films could maybe have their own like hour-long deep dive video. I'm not doing that. So if you want someone who's about to get into the nitty-gritty, that's not going to be me. I'm not going to be doing the gritty. And I'm going to be doing something else called scratching the surface. Just wanted to get that out of the way before people comment stuff like, actually the 4th movie in the franchise completely negates the point you make at the 22-minute and 37-second mark. So the first film that we're going to be talking about is The Purge. The Purge. And I will be reading a little overview or a synopsis of each film just so everyone knows what they're about. So, in an America ravaged by crime and overcrowded prisons. Right. Imagine that. The government sanctions an annual 12-hour period during which all criminal activity, including murder, is legal. James Sandon, Ethan Hawke, and his family face the ultimate test when an intruder drags the vicious outside world into their home. James, Mary, Lena Headey, and their 2 children struggle to survive the night while trying not to turn into the monsters like the one they're striving to avoid. Firstly, when I talk about this film, I'm going to be talking as if I am truly in the world of the movie, right? Because if The Purge were to happen in real life, I don't really know how much of it would translate to real life. Like, for example, in the universe of the first movie, crime and unemployment has been reduced to nearly 1% and has seemed to have a net positive on the economy, which I don't really know if that would happen in real life. I think that if The Purge was implemented today, people would still be doing crime around the calendar year because they're impatient. I also think if The Purge happened in real life, it would test the bounds of what Twitter is not able to take seriously. sometimes really, really bad things happen, and somehow Twitter, there's still a meme for it somewhere on Twitter. Especially since we're all collectively going through it, I think it would be a little bit of a playground. I think that we would see a few tweets here and there saying things like, not a guy getting stabbed on my driveway, LOL. And then for some reason there's just like a picture of Anne Hathaway under it. That's been a thing on gay Twitter. You'll tweet something and for some reason under there's an image of Laura Dern. And it's sort of like, where did she come from? But I also understand why you did that. There's something that it is resonating with me for some reason. But yeah, I could definitely see people during the Purge tweeting stuff, you know, like, who up playing with a rifle, making TikToks that are like, get ready with me to kill my ex-boyfriend. I've been waiting for this all year. But if I were living inside of the Purge movies, I would absolutely not be participating. I mean, the Purge is treated almost as this catharsis for Americans because after all, we're all just heathens who are aching and burning to do crime. And listen, I'm just speaking on behalf of myself. I don't really get an urge to do crimes. I don't really have an urge to cause bodily harm to other people. I like to do other things with my time, like go outside or converse with family and friends. For me, personally, I don't really need a dedicated day to do crime. I don't really want to do it, right? You know, me participating in the Purge would just look like me jaywalking back and forth, you know, or perhaps at most stealing some cute clothes, which compared to what some of these other people are doing is really not that bad. If anything, I'm just relocating inventory. That's what we should call stealing. I wasn't stealing, I was relocating inventory. The thing is, maybe I would do the Purge if every single American was on the same page of, hey, we're just gonna steal from big corporations and we're gonna get together to spray paint a beautiful, glorious, yet illegal mural on the side of a wall and just call it a night, right? However, that's not what these people are doing. I would be competing out there with people who are beheading others and gouging out people's eyes for fun. So for that reason, I will be completely isolating myself. During the Purge, right before it starts, I'm posting publicly on my Instagram story, no one hit my line, I need some time to think. And then I'm turning off my phone, I'm putting on some noise-canceling headphones, cozying up with chamomile tea in my bunker, and just I'm gonna try to enjoy my night as much as I can, I guess. So for this reason, I will be placing the Purge into someone's going to jail, and it's not me. The next movie we have on the list is Sinister. Okay, so I watched this movie in college, so I haven't seen it in a while. I watched it with my roommates, and I'm usually someone who does not get scared at scary movies. I won't lie. When I watched this movie, when I went back to my room, I was looking over my shoulder a little bit. The synopsis is as follows. True crime writer Ellison Oswald, Ethan Hawke. There's Mr. Hawke again. Oh my god, he's circling me like a hawk. Is in a slump. He hasn't had a bestseller in more than 10 years and is becoming increasingly desperate for a hit. So, when he discovers the existence of a snuff film showing the deaths of a family, he vows to solve the mystery. He moves his own family into the victim's home and gets to work. However, when an old film footage and other clues hint at the presence of a supernatural force, Ellison learns that living in the house may be fatal. And spoiler alert, but it turns out that there is a pagan Babylon, Margot Robbie, hey, how you doing? So there's a god. There's like a bad god. Or maybe he's not bad, maybe he's just misunderstood. I don't know the guy personally, right? But his name is Bagul. And this so-called Bagul has been possessing children to the rest of their families. And there have been many families that have been, haunted by this ghoul, causing multiple family deaths, all who are like linked to each other. And our protagonist, Ethan Hawke, has directly inserted himself into this string of family murders and hauntings. So I will be putting myself in the place of Ethan Hawke's wife. Right? Okay, so let me get this straight. You're going to move me, our 2 children, into a murder house without telling me so that you can work on your book because you feel that you're in your flop era. You know what? I'm going to work on a book too. The Guinness Book of World Records for nastiest divorce in America. I'm taking the kids. I'm taking the air fryer. You have me aghast. You have me aghast. You are moving us into a home where an entire family was brutally executed. For why? So you can be front and center at Barnes & Noble? So you can collaborate with Ryan Murphy on his next biopic? And listen, I want to be a supportive wife, okay? If my hubby wants to be a writer, I want you to achieve your dreams, right? But perhaps, maybe we don't have to put our entire family through the stress of moving, let alone moving into a latent crime scene. And I'm sure that I'm not the first person to think this, but I do, when you're watching the movie, there's a lot of things that are going on that sort of overshadow this train of thought, but this movie really doesn't paint men in the best light. Or rather, it contributes to the stereotype that men aren't really good caretakers, they aren't good nurturers, and they only concern themselves with greatness. And I do fear that Mr. Hawk's character does fall under this umbrella because what do you mean you moved us all out to bumfuck Tummy Tuck, Pennsylvania so that you can play detective? At this point, I'm gonna get you before Bagul does. Or I'm gonna be saying to Bagul, which, first of all, Bagul, no disrespect to, I don't know if Bagul is, maybe I should have done more research. I don't know if Bagul is a real thing or if it's like a Greek mythology. Like, I can talk shit about Athena. She's not gonna do anything, which is not real, right? But I'm saying this just as an observation, Bagul. Your name sounds like a collaboration, a brand collaboration between Bagoo Bags and Jewel. Perhaps it would be like a little Bagoo bag for your Jewel. Look at me and my little bedazzled Bagul. Okay, why is that kind of cunt? But anyways, I would be saying to Bagul, listen, buddy, let me reason with you. If you can leave my kids out of this, honestly, just possess me and I'll kill my husband myself because I was already thinking about it. So I am between putting Sinister into mommy loves you, but this fucking sucks, and someone's going to jail, and it is me. Because I'm thinking that if we moved into this house and we didn't have kids, maybe none of this would be happening. But honestly, the audacity of, obviously, my husband didn't know that all of this was going to unfold, but just the fact that he got us into this situation, I am going to be putting this under someone's going to jail, and it is me, because I'm going to be doing some things that are uncouth and out of character. The next horror film that we will be discussing is Talk to Me. The synopsis of the film is, when a group of friends discover how to conjure spirits with an embalmed hand, they become hooked on the new thrill and high-stakes party game until one of them goes too far and unleashes terrifying supernatural forces. So I actually saw this in the movie theater with my friend, and I've mentioned this in a yapping video before, but whenever, honestly, although this is a horror movie and it's quite sad in its content, whenever I think of this movie, it just brings back great memories for me, because me and my friend were saying if we were in the situation, if we were at that party, we would be so scared that we would be trying to make a joke out of everything. So a part of the transaction with you in this hand is that you're supposed to hold it and say, talk to me, or I let you in, right? Me and my friend were saying we would go up to the hand like this. All right, so talk to me. Hey, buddy, talk to me. Swing that a swing, talk to me. But anyway, back to the point. Sometimes to have the narrative of a horror film work and expand beyond 10 minutes, the characters kind of have to have bad judgment. If you had a horror film where everyone was in their right mind or had good decision-making skills, it would be more of a short film. Not even a short film. It would be like a reel or a TikTok. And while the main character does make some bad decisions, it's all coming from a place of grief because she's wanting to stay connected with the spirit of her mother, right? So I definitely understand that. And I think grief can make you do... It can cloud your mind. It can cloud your judgment. So I do understand that. But putting myself with my current judgment and my current state of mind into the realm of that film in that party, if I walked into a room and saw a bunch of people passing around a haunted, embalmed hand like they're poppers, I would have to excuse myself. I'd say, oh, I'm sorry, I have to powder my nose, and I would never come back, okay? The only thing, you guys are trying to summon a demon here, I'm going to be summoning an Uber. Or I'm going to be summoning the spirit of Lucky Charms so that I can Irish goodbye. I remember one time I was in a closed space with a bunch of people who wanted to play with the Ouija board at a campground where someone really had died, and I couldn't really leave the situation because I was very far away from home. There was nowhere else for me to go. But I remember thinking to myself, this party is happening over here, and I'm all the way in the club next door, babe. Okay? I am not putting my dainty little paw on that thing. And while I understand the allure of the unknown, something that's interesting to me is when people try really hard to sort of connect with these beings from the afterlife or the other side. For me, it's like, I'll just talk to them when I get there. It sort of reminds me of how you don't want to text constantly before you meet someone in person, because when you finally actually meet, there's not going to be shit else to say. Did everyone try the chicken? I thought the chicken was lovely. So because I enjoy being in charge of my own mind and body, and I'm not particularly looking to make my body any sort of vessel for any spirits or demons, especially in a party environment, hi, I'm here to have fun, right? I will be slotting Talk to Me under... Am I the only normal one here? All right, next up we have The Conjuring and Annabelle. Now, these are classic supernatural horror movies. I feel like even for people who are not super big horror fans or anything like that, The Conjuring and Annabelle are pretty mainstream that I think most people have heard of them, even if you don't watch scary movies. The general synopsis for the franchise as a whole is as follows. The Conjuring universe is an American horror franchise and shared universe centered on a series of supernatural horror films. The films present a dramatization of the supposed real-life adventures of Ed and Lorraine Warren, paranormal investigators and authors associated with prominent yet controversial cases of haunting. Perhaps some of the ghosts had said racial slur before, and I'm saying that as a joke, but it's most likely real. It's most likely real. A lot of ghosts are old as fuck, so... The main series follows their attempts to assist people who find themselves harassed by spirits, while the spin-off films, like Annabelle, focus on the origins of some entities the Warrens have encountered. Interesting. Living in a place that is actively haunted. I think the most that I could handle are things that I could attribute to old pipes or a draft, you know? If a door is kind of creaking, slowly closing, opening, stuff like that. If there's sounds in the house that kind of sound like footsteps, but it also could just be the fact that the house is old as fuck. If I'm able to somehow rationalize it, even if I'm reaching, I think I can handle that. And if I had a roommate, I would need that person to validate my delusions, where even if we both hear clear footsteps, I need her to also say, those were just the pipes. I need it to be the sort of situation where it's two dumb bitches pointing at each other saying, exactly. However, when it comes to the cases that the Warrens take on, baby, you can't blame a draft on that kind of stuff. They're the big leagues, right? If you call the Warrens, that means some shit is going on. You don't call Martin Scorsese to help you with an Instagram story. You know what I mean? Like, they are serious. If the Warrens have been called, that means I have been dragged out of my bed by my hair and bitch slapped back and forth by one entity while the other entity is cracking my toes and peeling off my foot calluses. that actually sounds kind of nice. Not the bitch slapping part, but just the cracking my toes and peeling off my calluses. I don't have... And then moving it over to Annabelle. Okay, honestly, I'm not super scared of a lot of things, but something that always did freak me out as a little girl was the idea of haunted dolls. And there was this real haunted doll, trigger warning real. I don't know. This is about a real haunted doll, the way that Annabelle is real too, whatever, called Robert the Doll. I was so afraid of Robert the Doll, I would have nightmares about this thing. And Robert, if you're listening, I'm saying this with all due respect. The power you hold because you were giving me nightmares. As a little girl, I refused to ever visit Key West, Florida, because that is where the museum is, where he's held. I would, even if I were in Orlando, I would be like, I can feel his presence, he's here. Me at Harry Potter World in Universal Studios Orlando, I feel an evil spirit here, and it's not J.K. Rowling. It is Robert the goddamn doll. And in real life, the Annabelle doll isn't particularly scary looking. She's just a rag doll. But in the movies, oh good lord, right? I've mentioned this in a video that I made about horror movies years ago, but in the movies, they always make haunted dolls so fucking ugly, where as an audience, we sort of have to suspend our disbelief that people are willing to spend money on those dolls. Chucky, I'm sorry, not the best look. Why do I want to buy a doll with a receding hairline? Right? We gotta take his ass to Turkey. And these dolls are ugly in the way where it's not like a Labubu where it's cutesy ugly. It's ugly to the point where you're fucking up the feng shui. So anyways, thinking about the degree to which things would have to have escalated in order for the Warrens to be called, you would think that I would put this in, I would off myself within the first 40 minutes. But usually these cases, it starts with a knock here. It starts with a whisper here. What I will say is that a lot of the times, these spirits, they love a little anticipation. They're not gonna bring out the, big tutu fireworks right out the gate. They want to kind of give, they're breadcrumbing us. They're literally breadcrumbing us, toxic. So because of that, I honestly feel like I would drive myself a little bit crazy, especially knowing me where I always have to rationalize everything. I think I would lose my marbles a little bit beyond the first 40 minutes. So for that reason, I will be placing the Conjuring / Annabelle into, did someone put drugs into my acai bowl? However, it's important to note that I'd only be able to delude myself for so long. Once it starts getting to the point where these ghosts are pinning me to the ceiling and flipping me like a burnt pancake, and other people are also seeing it, then I am gonna have to be like, oh, I think I am in my right mind. I'm just in an awful situation. Next up, we have the Saw franchise. Oh, good lord. I've actually only seen a small portion of the Saw franchise, and when I say small, I mean small. Collectively, maybe 30 minutes or something, because I'm not really into body horror. I could handle body horror in the substance because it was also kind of camp and cunt, but when it's just pure nasty, it's not really the tea that I want to be gulping. Things that are just purely gore, I don't particularly find entertaining, but this franchise is one of the more culturally relevant horror franchises, so I did want to include it. If you don't know what these movies are, the series revolves around a fictional serial killer, John Jigsaw Kramer, and his apprentices. Kramer was introduced briefly in Saw and developed in more detail in the subsequent films. Rather than killing his victims outright, he traps them in life-threatening situations that he refers to as tests or games to test their will to survive through physical or psychological torture, believing that if they survive, they will be rehabilitated. And I can't really go into detail, but these are not games that you would be playing on family game night. These are gruesome torture methods, and for that reason, I think it goes without saying, I'm offing myself within the first 40 minutes. The moment I see that gangly motherfucker with that geisha white face and abrasive blush, I'm saying, oh no, we don't have to even, I have to take this into my own hands now. It's interesting that Jigsaw sees this as sort of a rehabilitative environment, because let's just say that even if I did survive all of these games, I don't know if I would have a more positive outlook on life. I can't say that I would leave the facility feeling refreshed and anew. Also, I found this article talking about the dumbest reasons that Jigsaw has trapped and tortured people. So I'm just gonna go ahead and read these reasons that people were taken without going into great detail of what happened to them, just for the sake of those who are faint of heart. Let's see. Sydney, allowing herself to be in an abusive relationship. Hank, smoking. Y'all better put that vape down before Jigsaw gets to you. Paul, attempted sewer of the side in the past. Addison, sex work. Zepp, being a jerk. Laura, shoplifting and kleptomaniac. Lynn, bad marriage and she had an affair. So, like, me getting kidnapped by Jigsaw and being forced to swallow a bucket of used needles because I rolled my eyes at someone once. Like, Mr. Saw, you need to be using your skill set elsewhere. I don't think anyone necessarily deserves to be tortured in, like, the really, really gruesome ways that he does it, but I think there are some people who might be a little bit more deserving than others. I'm sure there's also people that Jigsaw has chosen who are a little more deserving of these things that they were put through. But it seems to me that depending on the day, if Jigsaw is presented with a serial killer, a billionaire CEO who has killed hundreds of thousands of people indirectly, and a tyrannical dictator, he's gonna choose the guy who didn't help an old lady across the street because he had his AirPods in. I would say that I have a very strong will to live. There's still a lot of things that I want to do, but the Saw movies, yeah, I would be offing myself within the first 40 minutes, I'm sorry. My one and only line, if I were in the Saw movies, would be, are you serious right now? Up next, we have Hereditary. So this is actually one of my favorite horror movies. I really, really appreciated, like, I like horror movies where there's a bit of a slow build-up. It depends more on the psychological aspect rather than the jump scare aspect. And it is weird to say how much I love this movie because it is, at the end of the day, a very, very dark film. Me and my sister saw it in the movie theaters, and let's just say it was a dark and quiet ride home. The synopsis is as follows. When the matriarch of the Graham family passes away, her daughter and grandchildren begin to unravel cryptic and increasingly terrifying secrets about their ancestry, trying to outrun the sinister fate they have inherited. And without getting too detailed, the matriarch who had passed away was the leader of a cult, right? And let's just say, this cult is very tenacious and passionate. So this entire family was fucked from the start. First of all, I'm the eldest child in real life, so that makes me have a bit of a connection with Peter. However, I also have a peanut allergy, so that makes me have a connection with Charlie. So it's almost like I am Peter and Charlie combined into one person, and I also bring a bit of a Chinese-ness to the table. Putting myself in the shoes of Peter, that is the worst case scenario of a late night drive ever. For context, if you haven't seen the movie, Toni Collette tells Peter, to her son, to bring Charlie, the youngest sister, to this party to, I suppose, like, make her feel included and give space for her to make friends and stuff like that. Peter ends up bringing her to this party. At the party, there is a cake filled to the brim with peanuts, and Charlie has a severe allergic reaction to the cake. Peter is then driving, speeding, trying to get Charlie to a hospital. Charlie's allergic reaction is getting so severe that she's getting so air hungry. She takes down or puts down the car window and sticks her head out to get more air. Peter is speeding past this telephone pole. And then there was the biggest kerplunk ever known to man. Charlie got. And when I say I don't just mean like metaphorically, I mean this whole thing was taken off, right? That would be traumatized. Like, I can't even begin to imagine what he would have felt like in that moment and in basically all the moments after, right? I would be so, I don't like driving as it is, right? I would be so traumatized from driving that even if my friends wanted to play Mario Kart with me, I would say, guys, I have to do yoga and do a mindfulness meditation for 15 minutes because otherwise, once I get on this Wii console, I am going to be punching through the TV in a fit of just being triggered, and I'm gonna do structural damages to Luigi's Mansion. And I remember a lot of people saying, oh, Peter reacted so poorly. I can't believe that he just drove home and left her in the car. How could he let his mom find his sister like that? And listen, hey, listen. I'm not saying he went about the situation in the best way, but if I were to put myself in his shoes, I'm about to cry thinking about it, right? Because I have a sister. If I were to put myself in his shoes, I don't know. I don't know how I would react. And let's be honest, you know, what he did, sure, it wasn't great, but I don't really think there's a textbook reaction for that kind of thing. I would hope it's not happening super often. If I had been the one driving that car and I heard that loud ass thud followed by silence, and I'm saying, you know, Charlie bit my finger. Hello, Charlie, you there? And it's still more silence. Yeah, I don't know. And here's the thing. He drove home in a traumatized daze, okay? He drove home. He could not go to sleep that night. It's not like he, you know, that happened and then he, you know, stopped at the Taco Bell drive-thru and started playing Beyonce, right? You know, hey, I'm gonna get a chalupa. Thank God it's quiet back there finally. If you like it, then you should have put a ring on it. Another thing that would have been very challenging for me if I was Peter, after Toni Collette's monologue at the dinner table, it would have taken everything in me not to say cunt. Her performance there, it is genuinely, as someone who's, you know, an actor, oh, something shifted.
Don't you swear at me, you little shit! Don't you ever raise your voice at me! I am your mother! She
would have been screaming at me, you know, and all I get is that fucking face on your face! And then the camera would have panned to me, going, but in all seriousness, if for some reason I ever had the honor of working with Toni Collette, obviously I'd be a professional. I would do the scene as it's supposed to be executed for the director's vision and what makes sense for the film. But as soon as they yell cut, I'm gonna be yelling something else. Cut! Because I've been holding it in that entire time. I had to say it. I'm sorry, Toni, I love you. No, but in all seriousness, despite this movie's triumphs, narratively, if you're someone who wants to see a happy ending, oh no, you are not going to be getting that with this film, because everyone ends up possessed or dead. Spoiler alert. So yeah, there's pretty much no justice in this film, really. You know, I feel like a lot of people are probably thinking to themselves, God, this family just needs a fucking vacation. But Peter gets possessed by the entity of Payman, which is a pagan entity. And Toni Collette goes like this with sharp objects to her neck. Let's just say she didn't survive that. Husband gets burned alive right in front of Toni Collette, which gave us the I'm just going to insert it, the yassified face. So really the only chance at getting a so-called family vacation is if Payman inside Peter's body really wanted to fucking go to Paris, and then they kind of just had like a little duo trip. But to rank this, right, I feel like if I put myself into Toni's position, obviously also I love that I've been calling her Toni, but then Peter and Charlie, the characters' names, you know, her and I were just close like that. If I were to put myself in the mom's position, pretty obviously the category would be mommy loves you, but this fucking sucks. However, if I put myself in Peter's position, which I think I'm more readily able to do as an eldest child and someone who is not even close to being a mother, I would put it in, did someone put drugs in my acai bowl? Because there's a lot of little things that are happening to him, a lot of little things that happen in general throughout a haunting where you feel like you're losing your mind. So I would say I'm gonna go ahead and put this in. Did someone put drugs in my acai bowl? Then, of course, staying on the Ari Aster train, we must mention Midsommar, right? And fun fact, I actually enjoyed Hereditary so much that once I heard about Midsommar, I heard that the screenplay was leaked. Sorry if what I did was illegal, but I was so interested in what Ari Aster was going to do next that I did read the entire leaked screenplay. And after reading the screenplay before the movie had come out in theaters, I still decided to see it with my family for some reason. And some of you might be asking, Emily, why would you do that? And I would say, even I do not know the answers to some of the questions that most pertain to me. And here's the thing, my family is a very medical family, so anatomy and naked bodies don't particularly bother us too much. However, there still were a few scenes where I just thought to myself, I feel very aware that my father is next to me right now. But Midsommar, it's another slow burn psychological horror film, right? The synopsis is as follows. A couple travel to Sweden to visit their friend's rural hometown for its fabled Midsummer Festival, but what begins as an idyllic retreat quickly devolves into an increasingly violent and bizarre competition at the hands of a pagan cult. Ari Aster really loves a pagan cult. And honestly, I know that we just ranked something as did someone put drugs into my acai bowl. But I think it goes without saying that if you've seen this movie, it goes without saying that this is also going to have to go into that category because did you put drugs into my acai bowl? Yes, they did. They literally did. So I do have to be honest, if I showed up somewhere and it was a huge congregation of only white people, there would be a faint alarm kind of just going off in the back of my head. This isn't to say that white people should not be able to congregate. That's fine. Listen, I love Lululemon. But the way that I just lied, I don't own anything from Lululemon. But when you're the only or one of the only people of color in a space, it's just something that you notice. Even when I'm at parties and stuff and I look around and I'm like, this doesn't happen to me often, by the way, because I feel like I have a lot of friends who are people of color, but there are, times here and there where I'm somewhere on behalf of maybe like a white friend, and I'm like, wow, there's a lot of white people here. And I'm not put off, I'm just noticing. Because let's be honest, sometimes when white people congregate, it can be fun. Sometimes it can also be an omen. Also, I'm physically in a place where I'm unfamiliar with my surroundings, I'm unfamiliar with the culture, and that's fine. Learning about different cultures, there's nothing wrong with that. However, I'd be easier to take advantage of. For example, in the village, they have this tradition where they had two older people jump off of a cliff and themselves. And then to make sure that they were dead, this guy comes over with a wooden sledgehammer and fucking whack-a-mole. And I would probably be standing there like, okay, so what's going on right now is horrifying and gruesome and I don't want to watch it. But then they're able to just say, well, that's just a part of their culture. You're being culturally insensitive right now. And now all of a sudden I'm being canceled around the village because I didn't want to watch someone get beat like mochi. My man's being burned alive inside of a bear carcass, but I guess that's just how y'all do things here. And he did forget my birthday after all. Also, I know that they weren't in the best place in their relationship, and I'm probably just a jealous person, but there's a part in the film where the boyfriend character, Florence Pugh's boyfriend, is being pursued by one of the girls in the village. She puts a drop of her menstrual blood into his tea, right? I would be sitting there, hi, sorry, that's my man. Why are you trying to garnish his tea with your uterine lining, right? Now I have to give my man a cup of pomegranate hibiscus tea, and it's just my diva cup. But anyways, Midsommar, you are officially knighted into the did someone put drugs into my acai bowl category. one of the most distinguished categories there is. Okay, Final Destination. So I never paid too much attention to this franchise, but I did see the most recent one that was out in theaters, and I must say, I was entertained. And I know that I mentioned earlier that I don't really like, gore for gore's sake, but as far as goriness goes, I would say it's less than the Saw franchise, and there's almost a weird comedicness to it. I don't think Final Destination is a scary movie. I think it's sort of this, it's almost, is it camp? I don't even know if I would call it camp. It's so absurd, and you're kind of waiting to see the next absurd way someone's gonna die. It's not really like scary though, for me. But a summary of the Final Destination movies, the series focuses on groups of people trying to avoid death after one of them has a premonition where they're all supposed to die and then saves them, causing a rift in death's design. Death itself tries to set things right by killing all of those who have disturbed the balance of life and death. The series plays on themes of fatalism, predestination, precognition, fate versus free will, luck, etc. So basically, if you have the nerve to get out of a dangerous situation and you want your friends and loved ones to also live, death is going to say, how dare you? That was supposed to be my spotlight, right? And the rest of your life, they're basically going to be like, I'm gonna get you. Death in this franchise must be a Scorpio because, hi, holding a grudge much. If I escape death, respectfully, death, I think you should just gracefully take the L. There's billions of other people in this world, right? I mean, I'm just saying, I think that you are coming off as a little bit desperate at this point. Constantly hitting my line, constantly hitting my line. Give it a few decades. I promise you that we'll meet. A big part of these movies is that the person who has the initial premonition starts to live their life in a very paranoid way. You do not want to go out to dinner with this person because they're not going to allow anyone to get silverware because it's a stabbing hazard. No chips and dip for the table because tortilla chips have sharp edges and there might be a rusty nail in the guacamole. You know that one gif of that lady walking down the street and she's being bombarded by things that are loosely related or directly related to lesbianism? Final Destination is kind of like that gif, but replace the lesbianism with death. And I understand that obviously it's not optimal to die. I think most people, if given the chance, if death was knocking on their door and was like, hi, it's me, Death. You can ignore me or you can also answer. Most people are going to ignore. But at the same time, the way these characters are forced to then live their lives, it's no way to live. It is no way to live. I'm sorry, constantly looking over your shoulder like that. I mean, this whole film franchise basically asks the question, what if agoraphobia was the best option? Right? I feel like in this last movie, there was this older lady who has successfully continually escaped death because she completely isolated herself and separated herself from humanity and lives alone in this random cabin. Listen, I can be pretty introverted, but at some point I will need human interaction or at least Wi-Fi. What do you mean I have to separate myself from everything that I know and love in order to survive? Then I just don't even want to survive. If I were in this realm, I am offing myself within the first 40 minutes. As soon as all of this is, confirmed to be true, I am cursed and I am going to die if I step outside. I'm inviting all of my friends over for a little soiree. We're going to have a good, grand old time. And then I'm just going to go stand out in the backyard until an anvil drops on my head or whatever, whatever death has in store for me, right? I would not be able to live my day-to-day life in constant fear, even though we all do that sometimes to a degree. So, Final Destination, first 40 minutes, you know where you belong. Next, weapons. Now, Weapons is probably the most recent horror movie that I have on this list, so just spoiler alert, right? Okay, but y'all, if you have not seen this already, do it. It was an amazing movie. I enjoyed it so much. I love movies that have non-linear storytelling. My favorite movie, The Handmaiden, it also has non-linear storytelling. Weapons is a film by the same director who did Barbarian, which is another good horror movie, but the plot follows the case of 17 missing children, all from the same class, who mysteriously disappear. And again, I'm saying it, spoiler alert. It turns out It turns out that these children went missing because a witch infiltrated the family of a child in that class with the missing children and essentially turned the rest of the children into vessels of life who are under her control. Now, while weapons didn't necessarily scare me, it definitely kept me heavily immersed the entire time. The only thing that was lacking for me a little bit was the ending, but honestly, the rest of the film was so good that I can forgive it. But besides my opinions as a viewer of the film, if I were living inside the world of the film, oh, I'd be sick. And especially because the way that the kids went missing was so inexplicable, I would be going absolutely cuckoo bananas crazy. I would be, cue that meme of Charlie Day at the bulletin board. I'd be going full conspiracy theorist. I'd be just sitting out at my living room, tapping my foot, picking my nails, thinking to myself, okay, so all of the kids in the class, all of their names had a vowel. Does that mean anything? The majority of the kids in the class, there are water signs in the zodiac. Does that mean that they were drowned? Some of the kids in the class, some are blonde and some are brunette. Does that mean anything? But then you have this teacher who's receiving all of this blame, and I mean, I have to admit, it doesn't look great. It is a little bit suspicious. If I were one of those parents, I would be keeping an eye out for Julia Garnier. But God, to be blamed for the disappearance of 17 children when you had nothing to do with it. You have an uproar of angry parents in this conference room all pointing a finger at you, and you're... Hi, what did I do? All I did was walk into an empty classroom, have a drinking problem, and sleep with a married cop and broke his sobriety. Not great, but not a crime. Honestly, there's so much that I could say about this movie, but I don't want to drone on for too long, but I do have to mention our shining star, Gladys. Girl. Knowing what I know about her now, sure, I wouldn't want to be in her vicinity, but if I knew nothing about her and she just came up to me and wanted to strike a conversation, I fear that I think I'd love her. I think I would love her. She's so kooky Brooklyn lady coded. I feel like I would see her at some sort of vintage jewelry pop-up and she would be telling me how she owns a cockatoo who she believes was her husband in a past life. And I would be like, yes, Gladys, let's wake that up. I just really love when older women have a very distinct style that doesn't necessarily match their age, and they very much so still, I don't know, have a youthful spirit about them. In this case, Gladys was having the youthful spirit because she was using witchcraft to take over people's bodies. Not the best way to go. Retinol exists, babe, right? Obviously, she was having problems beyond retinol, but, I feel like she's the type of lady that I would regularly see at the farmer's market or something. And whenever I would see her, we would have cute small talk. And then as time goes on, I would hear about what she did. And I would be like, huh? Gladys did what? What the fuck? Right? I would be like, okay, 2 and 2 is not, things are not adding together. This is the woman who was telling me about all of the asymmetrical pumpkins that she has been collecting in her home. You're telling me she was capable of something like this? Gladys, I thought we were friends. And the fact that she would always be carrying twigs and a little bell in a huge purse, that wouldn't really strike me as strange. That would just seem like something that a woman who looks like her would do. If I saw that in her purse, I wouldn't immediately think, mind control, you're a witch, you're a witch. I would just be thinking, oh, Gladys and her crafts, oh, what good fun. But anyways, I will be putting weapons into the category of mommy loves you, but this fucking sucks. Because it's true. Up next, we have Terrifier, and let's just get this out of the way. I am offing myself within the first 40 minutes. The second that I see Art the Clown at my doorway, I'm saying, just 1 second, sir, and I'm gonna start sucking carbon monoxide out of a boba straw because Art, whatever you have in store for me, trust me, babe, I'm not interested.
Hi guys, I'm editing right now. I just realized I forgot to say a synopsis for the Terrifier films. Sorry, I'm being quiet because my roommate's sleeping. I'm gonna film it like this. All you really need to know is that Art the Clown is the embodiment of evil. He is literally he has no redeeming qualities, really. He's literally just an evil, evil, evil being who likes to literally torture his victims. And that's really all you need to know. He's not someone you want to be friends with. Art the Clown is a fugly, evil slut, or whatever they said in Mean Girls.
I mentioned earlier that I don't really like gory movies that are just really gratuitously gory for gore's sake, so it's safe to say that these films aren't really for me, right? And the Terrifier films have also been at the center of the conversations revolving around violence towards women in horror films and stuff like that. And I do have something to confess. I think I'm allowed to say this. I didn't sign anything, but I actually got offered to audition for the last Terrifier movie. And I did have to say no just because, well, career-wise right now, I'm not sure how smart of a choice it would be for me right now to take on a role that involves nudity and me being sliced up like sashimi. I think maybe I could do like a coming of age drama, or some sort of comedy first. So yes, if I were inserted into the realm of the Terrifier films, I would maybe try to reason with him a little bit. Hey, Art, do you want to use your words? They say words are the most powerful things that we have. Some might even argue more powerful than a chainsaw. So if you want to hurl some insults at me, I will gladly take that over whatever else you had in store. However, something tells me that Art wouldn't necessarily be open for negotiation, so I would have to take matters into my own hands if I could. All right. Last but not least, being constantly bothered by a male-presenting entity who belongs in the sewers, a plight many are familiar with, It is the story about 7 children who are followed and terrorized by an evil entity called It, which manifests itself in many different ways depending on what you're afraid of. But it often takes the form of a hideous clown, no offense, called Pennywise. Now, I do have to commend It on their dedication and versatility. The fact that you're able to show up as a pile of snakes for one person and then a scary, demented, shadowy figure for another person. I mean, girl, you have the range. It, if you're listening, I do think it would be pretty cool if you could maybe incorporate some everyday fears into your repertoire as well. For example, going to the DMV. Or you can go ahead and tell someone that they have to get an MRI, but they don't have health insurance. That would genuinely scare a lot of people. Almost more than a shadowy figure. So I would want to put this into, did someone put drugs into my acai bowl? But honestly, this is a group endeavor, right? It is a group of kids who are collectively experiencing this. So unless we're in some sort of group project psychosis, it would be more like, yeah, like did someone put drugs into our acai bowl? And I will say the situation that the kids are in, sucks, would not want to do that, but it's a good thing that they do have each other, because I'm imagining being tormented by It by myself at that age. Oh my god, that would be terrible. It would be why am I worried about getting, dragged into the sewers by a hideous clown when I should be reading Magic Treehouse and chewing on a hunk of Hubba Bubba? Imagine going through puberty and Pennywise is hunting you down. Like, I just got my period. Can you relax? I can't even wash my face to treat my teenage acne because you turned my entire home's water supply into black tar. So really, I think that this movie doesn't really fit perfectly into any of the categories because, well, the categories are quite abstract. But if I have to choose one, I would say someone's going to jail and it is me. And the reason I say that and not someone going to jail and it's not me is because something tells me that Pennywise can't really be confined to a jail cell. I feel like if a cop were to try and arrest Pennywise could just turn into whatever fear they had, right? Like, Pennywise could turn himself into body cam footage of that cop punching another person just because they felt like it. High weapons. And in order to defeat Pennywise, I would say that we'd probably have to engage in some illegal stuff. Something tells me that we might have to bend the law a little bit. I mean, at the very least, we're trespassing in the sewers. And then who's gonna believe what I have to say when I'm arrested for loitering in the sewers. We're all gonna get arrested for being down in the sewers, and the cops are gonna say to us, hi, what are you doing down here? Because of you and your friends, every shitter in the tri-state area is fucking clogged. And then our response essentially has to be, listen, you are not gonna believe this, but so for that reason, although I wouldn't want it to be true, I will be putting it into someone's going to jail, and it is me. It is me, unfortunately. So that concludes today's ranking of horror movies. I hope that you all enjoyed it. Even if you don't like scary movies, I hope that this was maybe still enjoyable. Yeah, I'm realizing if you don't like horror movies, this video might have done jack shit for you. But I have really enjoyed making these videos where it's kind of just me talking to the camera. It's like it's a yapping video, but I have a script. I'm almost treating it like my own personal version of stand-up that's only in my room, so I don't have to embarrass myself in front of an audience, which is optimal. But I hope you guys had a good Halloween. If you dressed up, comment down below what you dressed as. I dressed as a Draculara from Monster High. My costume won't be exact because I really don't like spending money, but I did try my best. Anyways, I hope you all have an amazing day, and until next time.